Bola Sokunbi, welcome back to So Money. It's so great to have you.
Thank you for having me, Farnoosh. I'm so honored to be here again.
You have been very busy. Cannot believe. What is this, book number 4?
Number 6, I can't believe it
6?
either.
Your new book is called Clever Girl Millionaire. It's part of the Clever Girl brand that you built over a decade ago. I remember I knew you when. And this book is very personal, it sounds like, to you as it incorporates and weaves in a lot of story about the immigrant impact when it comes to managing your money. But also, it sounds like you've really grown up with your audience. And now you're talking about some things that are more sort of like later stage, I would say, when it comes to the mindset around money, things like legacy, things like, what do I want my money to represent? But you tell me, what was sort of the thinking behind this sixth book?
So you are right. I have grown up with my audience and I have evolved as an individual with my finances, as an entrepreneur. And I got to the point where I achieved this milestone and people wanted to learn more about how I did it. And in reflection, outside of my brand and my business, just in reflection of getting to where I am now today, I was thinking back before I pitched the book, before I wrote the book, how I got here. And it was accumulation of many different things, starting with my parents and the decisions that they made that changed the trajectory of our family. And I started thinking about, well, the decisions that I have made have led me to this point, despite the mistakes, despite the errors, despite the setbacks, despite not being defined in a certain way by social media or current society, but I still got to this place. And I wanted to share that with my audience who had been asking, but also use it as a form of empowerment to women in general and our allies to really inform them and have them understand that this is possible for you too, regardless of what your starting point is or isn't. So the idea behind Clever Girl Millionaire is really just thinking through, shifting from thinking, is this possible for me, to what can I do to make this possible?
The concept of millionaire, what are you finding from your audience in terms of the relationship that we have to this word? Because for women, especially, I feel as though we don't grow up with the supportive narrative of you, first of all, that we should be rich or should want to be rich to seek money, right? But then to actually attach an amount to that, right? Millions of dollars. And so that vocabulary we don't grow up with. But now we're being pushed into that and that's great. I do that, you do that. So many women in the personal finance space are doing that. But what do you hear from the women in your community? Like, are they quick to like say yes, or is there like some insecurity?
Saying yes takes a lot of shifts. So what I've
Mhm.
found in general is that there's a lot of hesitancy, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of ha ha ha, that's not even possible for me. And there's a lot of feeling like it's so far out of reach.
Yeah.
That's the general take I get when I talk about this with women. There's a lot of hesitancy and fear. And it's like, how can I think about that big goal when I'm here trying to figure out paying off debt or navigate, sending my kids to school, or I'm living paycheck to paycheck? That just seems so far out of reach. Woo woo, kind of.
Right. Well, that's what I really wanted to kind of kick off and ask you about is like for so many people and not just women, I think this country, we're a debt-ridden nation, right?
Yes.
Like for so many people, the best case scenario is just to get to zero, not
Mhm.
millions. Is
Yeah.
like, I just want to get to a place where I can wake up and I don't have creditors calling me and I don't have a bill from name the credit card company. So for those who are there, right, what's
Yeah.
the first step? Because this is an incremental process, right? And you know it, I know it. So like where for those who are there in that place, like what are the tactical things they need to do? Um, as well as the mindset shifts.
Yeah. I think, for someone who's in that space where they're just trying to get by, it's really making sure that your finances are in order. And it's all the financial foundationals that you and I both talk about. It's taking a look at all of your income coming in, looking at your expenses, looking at the big picture, of everything you have going on with your finances, making sure you're aware of all of your debts, and then start to think about, okay, are there opportunities for me to cut back? Or are there opportunities for me to increase my income? Because you can only cut back so far. And are
Right.
there any tools or systems I can leverage to make this easier for me to approach? So it requires some objective thinking, even though when you are in a dire situation or things are tight with your finances, it can be highly emotional. But you have to be objective to say, okay, this is what it is right now, and this is what I can control, this is what I cannot control. Do I need to pick up my phone and talk to a creditor or a utility provider and have a conversation with them about payments? It's really trying to get a handle on what you have going on now. Once
Mhm.
you've kind of gone to a place of stability with that, then it's what can I put away? What can I start putting away for my future self, starting with saving and that emergency fund and then investing for future you while you continue to navigate the now. I think the biggest thing when it comes to shifting mindsets is getting away from the idea of overnight sensations and social media and, you know, everything that we have going on around us doesn't necessarily help us. There is this new generation thinking that we
Mm.
could get rich quickly. And it is possible to get rich quickly, but most wealthy people have gotten wealthy over time, slowly, steadily, consistently. And that's what makes it attainable for everyday people like the rest of us.
Right now, there's a lot of uncertainty in the world, and whatever you're looking at, the
Mhm.
stock market, the job market, even the entrepreneurial world, right? Because people are spending less. If you're in the coaching business, in the services business, getting those customers to pay you for the same things they were paying you 5 years ago is difficult. Interest rates are going up. And so affordability of homes is really difficult. And so the cost of living today arguably and just getting by today in all those ways is more difficult and challenging than before because we just don't know. What's your advice for people who are really terrified of uncertainty? And that's the thing that's keeping them from believing that they can and should participate in this wealth building exercise, in this journey, like to actually do the things to get out of debt, to do the things to, like you just said, and then actually reach for that $1,000,000 goal.
So I'm going to talk about this from my perspective because I'm very familiar with uncertainty. My perspective as first generation immigrant, right? So my family moved here from Nigeria. And my mom was a investment banker in Nigeria. She had an MBA, she had multiple side hustles, and chose to migrate here for a better life so that she could afford to send me to college, given the exchange rate, knowing that I was going to college here as an international student, and just for the opportunities that this country offered. And so she moved from Nigeria and came here with uncertainty because her degrees and her titles and her businesses did not automatically transfer. And my mom started working here as a nanny, taking care of other people's children, eventually becoming a nurse's aide, and then becoming a nurse, which was her goal. And when I look at my mom back then, I remember watching her and I could feel the humbling experience that she went from being this
Mhm.
status of person in Nigeria, coming here now being at the very bottom, not sure how she was going to get back on her feet, working, taking care of people's kids, minimum wage. And I think for her, and what I learned from her was that she held on to an intention and a vision.
Mhm.
Yes, things were hard for her now. She didn't necessarily know how she was going to make all ends meet, but she did what she could with her control. And I remember my mom would tell me my options are to sit here and complain or to figure out what I can do to move the needle forward little by little. And
Mhm.
it was painful, was uncomfortable. And so for people dealing with uncertainty, I mean, you and I, Farnoosh, we've gone through several seasons of uncertainty with different economic crisis, the housing bubble, COVID, all kinds of stuff. We have a choice despite what we can't control. And the choice is
Mhm.
what can we do within our control? And so, yes, going to the grocery store and trying to plan out your groceries because of affordability, things are so much more expensive can be hard. But what can you do with what you have? And
Mhm.
again, getting creative, right?
Mhm.
Despite what's going on in the economy, statistics show historically that the biggest opportunities are always buried in these difficult times. So what can we do to make it work? Can we cut back? And if we get to the point that we've cut back so much, what can we do to get creative and bring extra income in to be able to support our needs in that short term while we figure out our future selves. The other thing I would add about uncertainty is that uncertainty will force you if you are ready to step out of your comfort zone. My mom becoming a nanny was well out of her comfort zone. She was
Yeah.
an investment banker. So
Wow.
are you ready to step out of your comfort zone to achieve that thing you want, to get by, to make ends meet, to start pursuing your goals in uncertainty? Or is it comfortable for you to sit down and watch the news and feel panic, and continue to allow yourself to feel panic? And it sounds harsh, but again, going back to what I said earlier, situations like this, seasons like this are highly emotional, but we kind of have to find ways to look at things objectively and say,
Mhm.
this is what it is. What can I control? What can I not control? And based on what I can control, what can I do?
Yeah. I was writing a lot of notes as you were speaking, um, 'cause, it was all so good, so many gems. Okay, so first of all, I wanna point out what you just said, which is, getting uncomfortable, and this word came to mind, this idea of disruption. So we use this word a lot in the business world, right? We think about these companies that have become these unicorns because why? Because they identified what wasn't working in their industries and they created out of the box ideas and they disrupted a system and then of course they became successful,
Well,
but it took a lot of believing in a concept that maybe took a lot of risk and it took time, it took pain, but they knew that the status quo was not sustainable. And if you apply that to your personal life, it's all there, right? When you know it in your bones when something is not sustainable, okay? And so the choice becomes, am I just going to let this ride? Like your mom said, you're just going to sit here and like, just fold your hands, or are you going to disrupt this
uh-huh,
and drive this change? I love that. And then, when we're comparing this generation and this era to say your mom's era and my parents were immigrants too, we could argue till the cows come home about whether they had it tougher or we have it tougher or things were, cheaper then, but with inflation, was it really? But I think the bigger takeaway is that what are the things that never change, right? That we can lean on in difficult times and the themes that always come up. And your mom's story really illustrates this beautifully. Things like intentionality,
mhm.
being willing to withstand some pain. This comes up on our show all the time. Like people who want to get out of debt really get out of debt, like hundreds of thousands. They don't just like pay the minimum on their credit cards every month, right? They like upend their lives. They go back and home and live with their parents. They take on side
Yep.
hustles. They might declare bankruptcy, honestly, and then try to rebuild, navigating the system, getting creative. So, I mean, this is all brilliant stuff. Do you remember a time when you got really like when life got painful for you in order to sort of, get to the next level? I'm trying to think about, a painful time for me. I mean, I would say like just painful is a subjective word.
I mean,
Like, let's see here. I'm not gonna compare my pain to my parents' pain, immigrating from a war-torn country in
mhm.
the '70s, not to compare, but yeah, I mean, it's all relative, I think, being, subjected to New York City in my 20s and not having the ability to live it up, $18 an hour before taxes. Say no
I
more.
Yeah, I think it depends on what you consider pain. Like you said, if we compare it to where our parents are coming from, is it really pain? My parents are first generation everything, right? So they're first
Right.
to go to grade school, high school, college, and they came, they did all of that and came out with I wouldn't call it a burden, I'll call it the obligation of the extended family. And so my parents, given that they had these education, they had these degrees, depending on despite how they started, they had the opportunity to build wealth because they were making decent middle class incomes. But they had their extended families, their siblings and cousins, and these are people that my parents have had to take care of even till today. So they
Wow.
had this huge obligation of family to take care of. So when I think about painful or difficult seasons or not being able to pursue my goals, nothing compares. But for me, I guess one of the first experiences that really challenged me, that made me think what could be possible for me, was not having enough money to get through college. My mom was here working as a nanny. I had partial
Mhm.
scholarships, and we still didn't have enough money to pay for tuition. And I didn't have anybody to ask to co-sign for a student loan as an international student without putting on that burden of debt, because we had uncles who had already done that for my brothers. And I remember I had to take time off of school. And as opposed to your standard 4-year timeline, it took me 5.5 years to
Mm.
college. And so at that point, I was like, this is who I am. We're just meant to not have enough money to do what we want to do, right? So that's one. Painful, definitely building a business. You know what that feels like.
Yeah. Yeah. Humbling. Humbling and
Humbling.
scary. Every year there's, periods of anxiety, right?
Yes.
Because it's so funny. It's so funny how the brain operates. Just they say that the body keeps the score, but not when it comes to entrepreneurship. My body should know by now that I always end up fine. Like I've never, we're not living in a shoebox. The IRS is not coming after me. People are getting fed in my house, but somehow there's a moment of severe fear of scarcity that
Yes.
I have, usually around December when my accountant emails me. Another huge pillar of your new book theme is this concept of legacy that I
Yes.
think is a really profound topic. And for women, I can't speak for all women, but I know for me and many women in my life, this really speaks to us. And I think when we talk about planning your financial life, it's very important to have a north, sort of a north star, and to think about your why, and to think about, okay, I'm planning this financial life not just because it's going to buy me all this stuff that I want and all these shiny things, but it's because like I wanted to represent some values, right? And I wanted to maybe reflect, who I want to be in this world, but also like support people in my life, and, like support a community, or institutions, or whatever it is, like legacy, right? What do you want your life to sort of represent and uphold? And money
Yes.
can be a tool for that. And I think for women, that's like such a powerful idea and a motivating idea to go
Yeah.
out there and get the money. Why did you want to bring legacy into this conversation?
Because it's so important to get clear on what you want to achieve, one, what you want to set the stage for your children for, if you have children, your community or your environment, and how you want to look back and say, okay, this makes me feel good. I did this and now I know it can go on beyond me. And
Right.
when I think about legacy, for me, it's not just about money. There's several aspects to legacy for me. So when I first started my business, as an example, I didn't know what my business was going to be. I didn't know it was going to be Clever Girl Finance, but I remember feeling a gaping hole kind of in my being. This was partially postpartum as a mom to twins, but I kind of felt like the work I did at my company where I was a number, even though it wasn't important, if I wasn't there, it still went on. And I
Right.
felt it's so compelled because now I had these little kids to do something that mattered, that I could say, this is what mommy has done. Now, so that was an idea of legacy for me at the time. My dad recently passed away a few months ago.
I'm
And
sorry.
oh, thanks. Thank you very much. But my
Mhm.
brothers and I were just talking about the legacy that he left for us. So my dad didn't leave us any trust funds. He didn't leave us any vast amounts of money. He left enough to take care of my mom. And he left us with final words saying, I don't owe anybody anything. But when we think about the legacy he left for us, my dad very much prioritized education, cutting
Mhm.
your coat according to your size, and giving back. And that's what we were raised on. And my dad was a late starter. He started the first grade at age 13 because he came from a
Wow.
background of poverty. There was no money to go. He went on to get 2 PhDs, become very successful in his field
Wow.
as a mathematician and a econometrician. And that legacy, that decision to pursue education, because it was somewhat optional at the time, because the option was to go to the farm, changed the trajectory of our family. Now, my dad's younger brother chose not to complete his education. He went to a few years of grades of high school and dropped out. And their lives were vastly different in the sense that my dad supported his younger brother and all of my cousins,
Wow. Wow.
right? For decades, even up until today, we still support my cousins. And when I think about decisions that he made to go to school, to pursue formal education, to empower us with knowledge, to educate us, that changed the trajectory of our generation, my dad's generation
Right.
cascading forward. And to me, that's legacy. And, there's not dollars involved. He didn't say, Bola, here's $1 million. So when I now think about what my legacy is going to be, to answer your question, I want to be able to position my children where they can take care of themselves and figure life out no matter what. So empowering them with knowledge,
Mhm.
empowering them with confidence as children of color, but also financially passing on wealth to them that they can use to transition wealth to their own generations, but also have an impact in the way that makes sense for them. And so I believe impact and legacy are very closely tied together. Because when you create something that matters and you have the financial means tied to it, then you can start making big differences beyond
Yeah.
just yourself and beyond just your family. So, today there's a lot of complaining and a lot of anger about things that are going on in the economy, in the world, in politics, etc. And our voices are powerful. But when you can tie financial backing to that, then you drive change. Then
Mm.
you can impact communities, you can impact organizations, you can walk away from situations that don't serve you, you can support other people. And the other thing about legacy that my dad taught me is that I mentioned my parents were not wealthy. They both come from backgrounds of poverty. Is that you don't need to be rich to give back. So, given my dad's experience of starting school at age 13, I knew in my dad's hometown there are many other kids where the first option for you was to go and become a farmer and bring in food for your household. So when I got my first corporate job, I was like, I want to give back to this community that raised my dad, that allowed me to be here in this position where
Mm.
parents valued education, had great education. I'm working, wasn't making six figures, but I talked to my parents and we set up a scholarship fund for kids in my dad's hometown. And me, my friends, and family all started contributing. And over a 12-year period, we sent 12 kids to school, to grade school and high school, fully paid for. And that is legacy
Wow.
for me. That's impact. And that changed the trajectory of those kids' lives coming from a background of poverty.
And your dad was alive to
Yes, my dad was alive to
yeah.
see that,
Wow. Oh
and
my gosh.
so, legacy and impact is not just about money. It's not about you waiting to be rich to do it. It's
Yeah.
thinking about it now, and it's very personal to each individual. What's meaningful to you? And when you look back, what do you want to be like, "I'm so glad I did this," and then how do you want your dollars to act on your behalf to create impact?
That's incredible. What a story. So I'm fascinated by the fact that your dad chose to continue and further his education, 2
Yeah.
PhDs, not even just 1. His brother chose a different path. And in your culture, is it just assumed that the wealthiest sibling will take care of the family? That is a non-discussion. Like that's just happening?
It is assumed. So me and my siblings have inherited some of my dad's obligations
Oh,
for his
yeah.
sisters. For his sisters, my dad has a twin sister that was not formally educated. So for context, my grandfather did not believe in educating the female child. Like if I were to meet
Oh,
him, I need to have a conversation with him. So my
wow.
dad went on to get this education, but my aunt, his twin sister, she doesn't read and she doesn't write, even though she runs her own little side business. So, we took on that obligation of taking care of her and my dad's other sisters who are not formally educated. But yes, that is the expectation. Not everybody does it, right?
Mhm.
But, as someone who's raised with these people, when you have siblings or your siblings have kids, you feel that tug in your heart.
Yeah.
So my
What
mom
would
can just
you
go ahead.
what would you do if you didn't have the financial capacity to support them? I have many audience members who
Yes.
because this is cross-generational, I think,
Yes.
we and it's often maybe like the child grows up and then is supporting the aging parents. That's often the case. It's not maybe like
Huh?
a cousin, but or an aunt, but it's a pressure point for them because they're trying to maybe pay off student loan debt and retirement and their own savings. And this feels like a non negotiable. And so it's tricky, right? Because
Yes.
it's your family, but it's also your money. It's your lifeline in some ways, right? You got to eat
Yes.
too. What do you say to those folks? How do you help them?
In my parents' generation, it would be, I don't have money to give you, but I can feed you breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Come and eat with my family. Or
Oh,
you can bring your kids and stay in the spare room in our house, even though I can't give you any cash to do whatever. But for this generation, it's a little different. There is that, again, the obligation. And this is something that's huge in immigrant minority communities, taking care of your family, your parents, supporting parents. And it's hard, right? Because you're trying to navigate your finances, your debts, your savings, your future goals. Maybe you have kids, maybe you're navigating life, divorce, etc. And then you have a parent or parents to take care of. And I think in today's world, it's really important that we start to position our parents, if we can, um, and empower them with information so that they can also start to take care of themselves a little bit, right? And that means maybe looking through their bills with them and saying, okay, you're overpaying here, let's cut this back. Looking through any benefits that they may have and making sure they're getting everything that they have worked so hard for. Or maybe they need to downsize into a smaller home because you've all left this house and they can't afford to do it. It's about having the conversation lovingly and kindly. I know in immigrant households, it's hard to go tell the person that birthed you, come here, let me talk to you about money.
No, right.
So we have to approach it with caution.
Yeah.
And then
Delicate.
I understand the obligation is real. And this may require that you have to build them into your budget, right? But you also have to communicate and say, listen, I'm building you into my budget to help support you with groceries every month or half of your light
Mhm.
bill, whatever it is you can afford. But this is the number. And so let's look at your finances. Let's look at any benefits you have. Let's look at what you have going on so I can help you, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And kind of get to a common ground. Or it could be, maybe they are moving in with you. You have to make it work in a way that makes sense for you, but don't, what a lot of people end up harboring the resentment and they
Yes.
don't communicate and they take it on as a burden and it starts slowly killing them. And it doesn't help.
Right. Yes, and I think the first and only option they think is I have to just pay whatever their
Yeah.
expenses are and it is what it is, as
Yeah.
opposed to let's evaluate, let's shrink costs, let's come up with cost alternatives, bartering, like moving in together,
Yeah.
all these things. I think also with married couples where one partner is financing a relative's life,
Yeah.
that conversation between the spouses can also be tricky. That is something that I hear from my audience as well. And we've done many episodes on it. I can link to those in our show notes. Um, single motherhood is a growing reality in our country as well. More women are the primary or sole breadwinners in their relationships, in their families. What's your advice for them in terms of protecting their money and also making sure that they're putting their oxygen mask on first? And we talked about supporting external family members, but it's also like just making sure that there's enough to go
Yeah.
around within their family, that single income can be hard to stretch.
Yeah, so I have a section in my book where I do talk about slaying, single and slaying. And, I feel like in a way there's this negative connotation about if you are a single mother or a single woman trying to build wealth, it's not possible for you. And so I try to reframe that and say, look at it as a superpower, right? You are in charge of your decisions. Nobody tells you what to do. Nobody tells you what you can buy. Nobody's going to tell you how to decorate your room or none of that stuff. You decide. And so that puts you fully in control in the driver's seat. The con of that is that you are fully in control, which means that you don't have a fallback. But then knowing that this is a situation that you're in, how can you start to build your own buffers, your own hedge around you to protect yourself? So if you have a stable income, if you don't, that's your number one priority. How do I stabilize my income? How do I stabilize housing, food, my core essentials for myself, for my kids? That's the first priority. Once you're able to get to that point and you start having extra money or discretionary income, or you get a better paying job, or you have side hustle income, or you cut back here and there in your budget, your priority is to start putting money to backup funds, emergency savings for you and
Mhm.
your child's needs. But also, no matter how little, start putting money away for your future self, whether it's through your employer's plan, through an IRA, start investing. And one thing I will always harp in on is that no amount is too small. I think almost 10 years ago or many years ago, I came on your podcast about my saving $100,000 in 3.5 years coming out of college. And people assume that I just had all this money coming to save $100,000. There was this incident, not an incident, but there was a scenario that happened that I constantly use an example where I was trying to build consistency with saving money. I wasn't making a lot of money. I was making $54,000 before taxes, but I wanted to just keep saving something. And I did my budget for that pay period and I had $1 left over. And I said, I can use this dollar, I can fling it on my counter, go buy some gum, or I can take this, I can try to deposit it. So I tried to do an online transfer, but my credit union's minimum was $10. So I got in
They're
my
like,
car.
"Yeah, nice try.
I got in my
Keep your
car.
dollar." They're like, "Keep your dollar. Thank
And
you."
I drove to the credit union and I put the dollar in the counter and I said I want to deposit it. The teller was like, girl, did you
What?
drive all the way
You
here?
Spent more on gas getting here, come
Yes,
on.
and I was like, because I'm trying to stay intentional, the point of that is that those small amounts, they add up. At the beginning stages is less about the amounts and more about the consistency, so that when you get that bonus, that tax return, that extra money, you automatically save some of it because it's now built into who you are.
Banks should have been celebrating you. Balloons should have come
I
down
was
from the
like, "You're
ceiling,
ridiculous. What are you
Bola.
doing here?"
They should have been the first to congratulate you on your intentionality. Bola Sokunbi, thank you so much. And I cannot believe 10 years ago
I
was the
know.
first time you were on the show. And now I mean, you've been on before, and between that, it's always a pleasure to have you on. Congrats on your latest success. You look great. You sound great. Can't wait to have you back on, and stay warm because I know we're both in New Jersey. I hope you are
Yes.
done shoveling.
Ugh.
I don't know if we'll ever be done, but fingers crossed.
But Farnoosh, I just wanna tell you, thank you for all your consistent support over the years. You just gave me a lifeline when nobody else did, no, especially in the
What's wrong
early
with
days,
people?
right? So, especially in the early days, and so I am forever grateful to you for your support throughout supporting my career, my business. I really appreciate you, and I just wanted to make sure I say that, on record. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bola. Well, I feel it. I always feel it when you come on. You're such a gracious and kind and generous, and like you exude class and thoughtfulness. You don't have to say the words. I feel the love. I do. And you deserve every ounce of success.
Thank you.